We're back from the Advanced Swimming Performance podcast sponsored by our friends at Commit Swimming, the smartest workout log. Just type a set and Commit instantly calculates the data for you. To learn more, visit commitswimming.com. We highly recommend it. John, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing well. I have my least favorite team's burn up bobblehead on my desk over here.
We're making enemies here.
Exactly. So I'm from Ohio originally, and I'm a Cincinnati Reds baseball fan. But growing up, my dad and I used to do a little summer baseball trip, and we go to different stadiums. And I went in, I believe it was '98, to the Cardinal Stadium, and it was the year McGuire broke the home run record, and I got this beautiful bobblehead. And later on in my life, a little sob story: the house that my mom was living in while I was in college actually caught fire.
Oh, gosh.
This is one of the few things that made it through. This freaking St. Louis Cardinals bobblehead. And it's all burnt up and chipped as could be, but it's just here, bobbling along.
I
know that, man.
I think we need to make bobbleheads of us.
Cardinals. I still don't like the Cardinals.
Well, if I was a bigger sports fan, I'd probably have something to say on that, but I'm not.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, you're worried about you want bobbleheads for us, huh?
I want bobbleheads for us. I think that would be absolutely hilarious. And yeah, I mean, hopefully they wouldn't catch fire. I feel like that's a bad omen, but maybe we should.
I'm a little worried about that one, but I don't know. Bobblehead. I think that might scare some people there.
Well. Maybe.
I know Brains and Beauty is the headline of this podcast, but perhaps the bobblehead's taken that a little too far.
Maybe. So today, and I swear this ties into it, today we're talking about training struggles for multi-season aquatic athletes. I was recently working with a team in the greater DC area, and it's a pretty big team, and they've got access to both in-house healthcare as well as training. And I worked with a pretty elite high school athlete. He's not necessarily intending on swimming in college or anything, but he's really enjoying his career right now. But his family also does triathlon together. Mm-hmm. So with this particular team, they still have a very intense summer training program. But then he also goes and does triathlon. So I want to talk about some of his struggles. And I also want to relive the fact that I once did triathlon and I am never doing it again.
Nice. What distance did you do? I'm assuming an Ironman. There's no other place to start.
Well, right, except for the fact that I did a sprint and realized that when I was running and I had the 8-year-old starting to pass me, that I unfortunately represent a stereotype that swimmers should stay in a pool.
There you go. Well, hey, I've never done a triathlon, so applaud to you for doing one. But I have done the swim portion of the LA triathlon when I was down in grad school, and there was I was coaching a master's team at the time, and they reached out to our team seeing if we had any swimmers. This company reached out seeing if there was anyone because they needed swimmers. I'm like, all right, let's do it. I haven't swam in a year as the post college never going to swim blues in my brain. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I met my teammates maybe a second ahead of time. The team triathlon was the last wave to go. I go in, it's huge swells for Santa Monica that usually has barely any. Okay. I'm worried I'm like kicking grandmas in the head or having people drown behind me, but I'm moving along pretty well. I'm working my butt off, come out of the water doing okay. Get to the biker, and he goes, wow, I'm not that was quick. I'm not ready yet. I got to put my shoes on.
What?
Oh, so you've swam before, I guess. I thought you'd be out there for hours. It's like a sprint team triathlon. It's maybe like 500 yards.
Yeah.
And this guy's already that was I think our team overall, as you can imagine, didn't do so hot when the guy had to put his shoes on for the race.
Well, I think this is the point where I, beg the audience to send me stuff again. So I do have a cool microphone. I don't have a headset yet, but I might, I'm kind of growing on how this looks. So maybe I'll stick with this.
There you go.
Thank you. I want cool caps. I've decided I'm going to redecorate, and I would like some cool caps. And I think that, we are talking multi-season now, so, swimmers, triathlons. Well, I'll take a couple water polo pieces as well. And I want the funny ones, though. You've got the locket. I want the weirdo caps, whether or not it's like the funny joke cap from the team or a solid hamburger hot dog one. I've seen those. I've been pretty jealous of those. I want a cap. I want to decorate. So we'll see. We'll see if someone sends me something. We'll make sure my email is in the notes here, and you can start sending me some, and I'll rep your weirdo caps.
There you go. Flower cap it up. Send her some old flower
that
caps.
too.
So Jenni can really sport it up while she's swimming in hotel pools that are too cold.
Too cold. Yeah, I'm delicate, but I want to look funny as well.
Delicate flower.
Yeah.
Brains and beauty here. You got it. All right. So multisport. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about this, the issue with the multisport athletes, and maybe you can use some, maybe an example with this triathlete that you were working with.
Yeah, so some of the research that you and I have been pulling from looks at the differences in pain between swimmers and rowers. And with Aqueous, we work with rowers as well. And some of the things that I see in terms of crossover is basically posterior chain issues. And going back to this original high school athlete that I was talking about, he excelled at butterfly. So his coach just drilled him, 100 after 100 after 100 after 100 for sprint butterfly. And we were in Northern Virginia, which, if anyone's from that area in the summer, it does get really hot and humid. And we were struggling to understand why on this particular day he was eliciting some physiological symptoms that he hadn't in the past. We're getting dizzy, we've got an elevated heart rate, we've got, some issues going on. And what we realized was that he had gone and done some triathlon training that morning. Mm-hmm. So he had been out training in the heat between 10 and 1 and then showed up for indoor practice at 3. And I think this is just one of the struggles that some of our multi-season aquatic athletes can run into, is that they might think of themselves either just as a swimmer, just as a rower, or maybe they do both. But some of the cautionary things or some of the training issues that other multi-season or multi-sport athletes run into, we don't necessarily think about them. And I would like to make sure that we bring to light some of those training challenges and maybe some of the injuries that we can see from multi-sport athletes, multi-aquatic sport athletes.
No, definitely. And I think there's a lot of these multi-sport athletes out there, and I know that the rates of the multi-sport athletes are reducing, but it even gets into recreational stuff as well. Mm-hmm. We have Claire, the intern, chilling in the back right here, and I know she was a swimmer and dancer. And this is something that is not that uncommon and something that we need to be taking into account, because when we start looking at training load, training stress, all these things start to add up, no doubt about it. And like you said with that triathlete, if he's doing multiple hours in the heat, then going to an indoor pool that I'm sure is humid and really causing a lot of stress on the body, that can start to increase the risk of overtraining, obviously injury, a whole plethora of issues can occur from that.
Yeah, and to actually play off our last podcast with some jump training and progressions, he was really stressing his open turns because he was doing butterfly, right? So his big goal for his sets were, as much power as possible, really, really stressing that sprint performance. And one of the things that we had to specifically ask him in terms of training questions was what he did that morning with his other sport. And it turned out that he was practicing hills for biking. So now we have heat concerns, now we have cross-training concerns, and we have just workout concerns. His morning practice was structured as that fartlek training that we talked about a couple podcasts back. And now with the next sport, we have nothing but sprinting happening, and ultimately the body can only handle so much. So for that one particular day, we saw just a complete depletion of the energy systems, and we ended up with some issues there that we had to address. So when we talk about pain and injuries with multi-sport athletes, and I know a lot of time multi-sport has a connection with triathlon. But for this, we'll talk about just multi-sport as in multiple sports, not necessarily triathlon. What are some of the issues that you see swimmers starting to have when it comes to having multiple sports throughout their year, not just swimming?
Yeah, I think some of the issues that I'm seeing is no break at all from any sporting realm. So obviously if you are doing multiple sports, you're getting a little bit more balance throughout the body. At least there should be, unless you're doing something very similar to swimming, maybe like a water polo or synchronized swimming, as well as regular swimming. So you're getting, even though your body might be getting a little more balance from doing these other sports, that may just be the overall training mental stress of not having any mental break throughout the year can be a big issue, especially with some of these youth athletes. Obviously, there can be a lot of body parts that get stressed similarly. So if you have maybe a volleyball, swimmer, dual athlete, even more shoulder stress there. So you have a breaststroker, soccer player, even more knee stress maybe on the medial meniscus, MCL, those sort of structures. So just keeping into mind these types of things, even when they are in different seasons, these sports can overstress the body, overstress the mind still, and need to be considered. And then, like you said, if it is within the same season, you're doing multiple sports during that time, it needs to be something that you are considering what they're doing in that previous practice. Maybe you need to modify your dry land programming. Maybe not even do dry land, maybe do more of a mental stuff, or to be giving them a little bit of a break, whether it's in the water for water workouts or for dry land training. And like you said, talk to them. What were they doing? Communicate. Maybe reach out to the other coach of that sport. Obviously, a lot of coaches like their kids to do one sport, especially as they get older and older. But a lot of the research suggests being a multi-sport athlete and having these different sports in their young athletic career, and young could be all the way up to 18. But just getting exposure to the sport and having this other avenue of doing these other sports can help improve overall athletic prowess through long-term development. But you need to still communicate with these coaches and at least throw an olive branch their way.
Yeah, and I think we could get into a whole another series about play versus sport. What I also see, tennis and swimming seems to have, if we're going to have a multi-sport aquatic athlete, I see dryland sport participation with tennis a lot. And if we take a look at, again, just that overall movement that we're achieving, tennis is nothing but more flexion, more internal rotation, and definitely some stress throughout that lower quadrant with all of their footwork. So that is another situation where we can't stress that communication with a performance coach enough, that we need to be working on that posterior chain to make sure that it's strong. Some of our older masters athletes, we might have someone that does triathlon for stress relief. Anytime we work with older people, a lot of times we realize that their participation in sport is because of stress relief. And maybe they're trying triathlon, but they are a rower, something like that. For them, I'm going to go back to saying posture, especially if swimming is not necessarily their forte. If the rowing is more their forte, they are stressing that back component way more than their front component. And I think that when we go and transfer from any sport, whether we're going vertical to horizontal, push to pull, front to back, whatever, making sure your posture and activation pattern is a huge key to hopefully delaying, if not ceasing, any injury, but definitely will be a huge cue biomechanically if we're going to start to see fatigue happen.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Good. We'll transfer right into commit swimming. If you need a better way to log your swim workouts, and hopefully Commit will see that there's probably a bigger market, so some other workouts do, you should absolutely check out Commit Swimming. Commit is the most advanced workout journal that coaches and swimmers across all levels are now using. Why? Because it tracks your workout history, analyzes trends in your training, and most importantly, is extremely easy to use. All you have to do is type your workout like you would a Word document, and everything else is automatically taken care of for you. Try it for free at commitswimming.com.
Yeah, so when we're, once again, working with these multi-sport athletes, it is recommended that they are doing other sports, especially for the younger kids, but it's just huge for the communication issue or the communication issue to be resolved and just to be something that's occurring. So as a sports performance coach, Jenni, how do you get involved in this communication, and how do you think coaches could improve or set the first step towards improving communication?
Yeah, if I have my sports performance cap on, my biggest thing is to let the rest of the staff know that I am here to help them. Anytime I'm representing sports performance, I always send a personal note, whether it's through email or a phone call or something like that, to the coaching staff as well as to any clinician involved. I don't always get a response, but that's just kind of how I work. I want to make sure that everyone knows I am here to be part of the team rather than a separate entity that might be a barrier to the athlete having a good experience. But I want to know, especially with that 8 to 14, 15-year-old range, that what other sport are you doing at the moment? Because they're not always completely forthright. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of times we'll see is people being shuttled a lot. They've got one practice and another practice and a club team and something else, and they're not always forthright, especially if you have, like a 9-year-old boy is probably not going to tell you their entire schedule of activities. Yep. So getting the other coaches and the parents involved and really asking, what season are we coming out of right now? Because we all know that we're in swim season and we know what that takes. But what season are you coming out of? Are you coming out of off-season baseball, off-season soccer, in-season field hockey, in-season lacrosse? Like whatever you're doing, did you just come from a club practice? Did you just come from a clinic? What else is going on? What are other factors that are going to play into this particular part of the season? Particularly when it comes to establishing any preventative protocols with a swim team. If we're really entering into season and they've just come off of another season where they had a struggle, I want to know that so that we can build in a corrective component even into their performance plan, because we don't want to have that same issue carry into swimming, because since it is a full body exercise, odds are it's going to impact us negatively somehow. So really having that communication is key, and asking really pointed questions, I think, is the best way to get the answers that are beneficial from our professional side.
No, I couldn't agree more. And even on the rehab side, that's a huge component of showing you're a team player, reaching out. Oftentimes, at least with the coaches in the area here, I try my best to reach out to them so they're all on the same page, or I know them well enough if they do have questions with what I'm passing along to the swimmers, they know how to get a hold of me to answer any of those things. And then also just to, know that like you said, what sport are they coming from? What are they doing in PE class, maybe on their own? Yeah, that's a big one too. What are they doing for play as well? I mean, play is another issue. A lot of kids around here, I don't think, play enough personally, but it's one of those where PE is something where some of these kids are very active, are running around still quite a bit. So it's trying to figure out what is that training stress in there. If I have a youth athlete that maybe plays soccer, as a swimmer, is coming in with pain in the front of their knee, if they're running around all the time during PE class, maybe this is overstressing that patellar tendon, putting them at risk for something like Osgood-Schlatter or even a patellar tendonitis type of issue. So keeping in mind all these factors and variables really can help out the rehab specialist, like it is with the sports performance and even the coaching staff.
Yeah, and I can even say with our older clientele, whether we're doing corrective exercise or analysis in sports science, the big questions we ask our older clientele is what access do they have to fitness centers at their job? A lot of our larger corporate or larger healthcare people, they have on-site wellness programs, and they might have access to a gym with or without group training or personal training. So asking what they're doing during their workday is a huge key for us as well. If they're sitting all day and then they're a rower and they're going to go and sit again, that is a huge thing for us to take a look at. If they swim in the morning and then sit all day and then go and do rowing at night, if it's all just for fitness in general, not necessarily a team component, that offers us a lot more cues as well. So I think the big thing with training challenges is getting all the information. I think we can get into a huge conversation about the anatomical side of things, but gathering the information, I think, is really, really the first barrier, the first challenge that we all face, no matter what sector we're in, is getting that full, complete picture.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's what our first mentoring session is here with any of our interns or any people new on staff, is just how to do a subjective, how to communicate, and how to get the real answer. Because a lot of people are pretty vague or just short with their answers. And, in the PT side, we're most concerned if they're feeling better, worse, same, or different. And if, you say, hey, how you feeling today? Better. Okay. what does that even mean? Is that 1% better? Is that 90% better? Are they just saying that to stroke our ego? Or are they just sort of people pleaser? We got to figure out what it is. Is it less frequent? Is it less intense? You know, did you change your activities at all? Is that why it's better? So really making sure that you're understanding the full picture, the full training volume, what they're doing, understanding that sport. Say another athlete or an athlete does a different sport that you're not familiar with. We see cricket players here. What type of motion is going on there? If you're a swimmer that also plays cricket, what is that motion? If they're a bowler on their shoulder, and how is that going to translate? Some in the coaching, sports performance, or like myself, I find myself in the rehab staff looking into the sport, trying to figure out what more is going on during it. So like you said, communication is key. Then I think next, reaching out, understanding the stresses of some of these different sports, and then, you know, encouraging having them involved in different things, but just keeping in mind all these different factors is really huge.
Yep. You couldn't have said it better myself. I think we have covered training challenges for multi-sport aquatic athletes.
I agree. And this silly cardinal bobblehead that can survive through anything.
All right. Well, our listeners, send me some weirdo caps so I can match John's tchotchkes, I'm going to call them, with weirdness. All right, John, take care, and we will meet again soon.
All right. Take care.